Moonshine Jesus, baby, alright. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Thank you for joining us here today. A quick reminder, Moonshine Jesus Show is brought to you by progressivechristianity.org. And we also encourage you to follow us on the Facebooks. You'll find a page there for us, as well as all the places you get your podcasts. Please check us out there. But more importantly, let me welcome my good buddy, Caleb. Caleb, I'm so glad to see you today. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing wonderful, Mark. How about you?
Excellent. I am doing great. I'm excited to see what you think. We're going to be talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Should be interesting conversation. Real quick, for all of you that are out there watching and joining us for this will be a spoiler-full podcast. We will be talking about all the things that will ruin the movie for you if you haven't seen it yet. So just know that going into it. But as we get started here, Caleb, curious to find out, we always do some kind of a themed drink. So what direction did you go with for your themed drink today?
Okay, so for the past several weeks, we haven't been doing, shows where there were themed cocktails that you could easily find online, but this time there was, and so I found a cocktail for Ant-Man. It's called Ant-Man Shrinking Punch, and it is about a cup of cranberry raspberry juice, a freshly squeezed orange, and soda water, and a shot of vodka. So I like this because it's red like Ant-Man, but also in the quantum realm, there's this red juice, that they can drink, and then it allows them to understand each other. So I like the fact that it was red for that reason too. How about you, Mark? What are you drinking?
Well, I decided to go my own way. I wanted to do something that kind of accented Kang, so I will look for a green drink. I found a drink called a Shamrock, and what I did was I substituted Irish whiskey with American bourbon. It is Irish whiskey or American bourbon, a little dry vermouth, some green chartreuse, and a little bit of creme de menthe. So I get this lovely green color, and I've rimmed it with purple sugar to give the colors of Kang. You might notice that I've got my trim is actually a sucker that has edible ants in it. So I've kind of gone the whole way with this. So
applause to you, sir.
I'm calling it the Quantum. I'm going to call it the Quantum. So cheers to you.
I love it. I'm going to drink the ooze. Drink the ooze.
Drink the ooze. Not bad. Not bad. All right, sir. Let's take a quick break so we can get into a little bit of geeking out about this movie. We'll catch you all on the other side of the break.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Today we are talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It was just released and it continues the saga of Scott, Ant-Man, Hope, the Wasp, and this time they are joined by their family as they travel to the quantum realm. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a subatomic universe that exists outside of space and time. They discover that it is inhabited by a number of weird species, like, say, Bill Murray, and they have to stop Kang the Conqueror. So before we get too deeply into this, Mark, I want throw at you my favorite quote of the movie, and I want to get your reaction to this.
Okay.
So this is what Cassie, Ant-Man's daughter, says to Darren, an old acquaintance who is in the quantum zone. She says, Darren, it's never too late to stop being a dick. Mark, is it ever too late to stop being a dick? That's the question that is on my mind right now.
Absolutely not. It's never, ever too late to stop being a dick. And, you know, Darren manages to at least lean heavily into not being a dick as the movie starts to end itself. I was a little sad to see that because Darren ends up being Mordor, which is a very interesting and weird and funny, but also sort of menacing character in the comic books. A lot more menacing than he ends up. He's a bit of comic relief in this movie. And frankly, this movie needed a little comic relief.
It did. In his death, we told you this is spoiler full zone, and so Darren's death is one of the best parts of the movie and one of the most comedic parts of the movie. And as he's dying, he said, "At least I died an Avenger." And Scott said, "Yeah, you're in." Yeah, I love it. I think maybe he was my favorite character. Hey, so you just said this, Mark. The movie needed a little bit of comic relief. Okay, look, here's something that's interesting. This movie's been a little polarizing. It's been received very differently from critics and audience members. Critics have given this a 47% fresh rating, which makes it only the second. Okay, well, that's why I want to get your opinion on it, okay? Because it's only the second Marvel movie to be certified as rotten by the critics. The other one's the Eternals. But audiences have given it an 84%, and so you're an audience.
which is also not fair.
Okay, so where do you put it? Okay, it's not 47, it's not 84. Where do you think it lands, Mark?
I put it like 72. It's still it's fresh-ish. It's like
not quite splitting the difference.
It's like I took these canned tomatoes. I took these tomatoes from my garden and I canned them. And then a year later, I opened them. It's fresh-ish. Like, it's okay. Like, I think both sides get it completely wrong. I really genuinely do. Like,
okay, well, what are they missing? What's going on?
Is it the horrible train wreck that the critics say that it is? Yeah, it is. It's also not. I mean, it's trying to do so dang much, man. It's trying. It has these giant visions of what it wants to do, right? And visually, it is crazy. And I mean nuts. And I mean probably not well choreographed. Like, they did not communicate with each other. I think they basically took, like, I don't know, 15 different graphics groups and said, do something. And then they all did their own damn thing. And then they just
make it look cool.
Make it look cool and different and unusual. And let's make sure if you create any creatures, make sure that they are not in any way related to each other. Like, let's not see any kind of core development that may have happened centuries ago that they all came from. Just make them as different as possible.
Don't explain it either. Right? Don't explain it.
Right? Yeah. Don't explain it. And let's have so many different types of environments. They don't need to relate in any way. Make one desert one and make one kind of blobby thing, and then make a woods thing with lots of shining in the dark stuff, and it was a train wreck. It was a beautiful train wreck, but it was a train wreck.
That's a good tagline. I like that, Mark.
Beautiful train wreck.
Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, beautiful train wreck.
Train wreck. I mean, there was so much that was good about it. Like, I enjoyed the movie. Like, it was fun. I had a good time. If I'm being critical and trying to say that they do good movie making, there's a lot of it that was not good movie making, man. The storyline was okay, but at the same time, like, the title of this isn't Quantumania. The title is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Right.
Frankly, I don't know that we needed Ant-Man or the Wasp in this movie. This movie was really Janet Van Dyne and
Mm-hmm.
Kang's movie. This was a movie about
Mm-hmm.
those two characters. And so it felt really kind of like wasteful. I mean, well, you got Paul Rudd, one of the funniest, like
Yeah.
comedic timing is nuts, right?
Right. Yeah, he's fantastic.
And the first two movies, they made great use of that. They really
Right. Yeah.
And this movie, it just felt like he was a character and he had some character growth and development, although they had to take away some of the character development from the first two movies and put him backwards, like
Mm-hmm.
to make it work at all. They had to make him all of a sudden not really care about other people and have his. We'll get to that in the next segment, sure. But it just felt like it was all over the place. Great characters.
I think you're right. I think you're right,
Well,
man.
maybe-
It's
So what are you giving it? I'm giving it a. I'm going to say I'll give it a 72.
Okay.
What are you going to give?
Okay. I still give it fresh, but I'm gonna go in the 60s. I'm thinking like
Okay.
a 60, like maybe a 67. I'm still in the same range. I think it's fresh-ish. I think
Yeah.
right on the money. I think it was definitely one of the weaker Marvel films, and I think for the reasons you're talking about, that it was large in scope, it was ambitious, and yet there wasn't a ton of story there, and it felt like I agree. It felt like a lot of graphics, and it was fun. I enjoyed it.
It was.
But yeah. So here's the thing: this movie kicks off Phase 5 of Marvel, and here's the question that I'm left with as we're entering Phase 5. So a lot of the big Marvel superheroes that we've gotten to know since 2008. When the MCU was kicked off, a lot of them are gone now. They've died in the storyline, and we're getting this new group of superheroes that's rising up, and some of that's really exciting. We're getting to see we're getting to see more women. We're getting to see more people of color. We're getting to see a more diverse group and younger too, which I think is good.
Important,
but Mark, I'm kind of wondering. Has Marvel overextended themselves here? They've got the movies going on. They've got all these series going on Disney Plus. They've got cartoons, and everything's interconnected, and it's a lot to stay up with. And the movies that have come out recently have been, really received mixed reviews from both audiences. Are still enjoying them, but quality seems to maybe be going down a little bit. What do you think? Is this a strong start?
I think no. I actually think they haven't overextended themselves. I think the idea of this very unified universe of all these different like television shows. Matter of fact, we get a tag at the end of this one. It's the first time ever where one of the end credit scenes is actually completely about a television show, a serial. Like we have not had that before. I actually love that they're integrating them so tightly. I think what's going on here is that they are a victim of their success. Early on, before they became this kind of mega movie, like every star wants to be in the MCU now because they are so successful. I think they're a victim of their own success. The early shows, even Ant-Man 1 in particular, didn't follow much of a formula. They kind of let their directors and their writers have fun, which is what made the comic books that this is all based on so successful, is that there wasn't a formula. They changed it up. They switched things around. They did new things. They did unexpected things. And even in, like I said, Ant-Man 1 was more of a comedy than it was a superhero show, but it made it work. And now it feels like probably since Black Panther, the original Black Panther, the movies are all kind of formulaic. You never feel like the stars are ever at risk. You never feel like the main characters are at risk. They're going to win. You already know they're going to. You don't ever feel like there's any real tension over what will happen to them. And Quantumania was the perfect example of this. Like, you never once. I mean, Kang is supposed to be, we're into Phase 5, and Kang is going to be the big bad. Like, he is the Thanos of this segment. I don't know about you. Wow. Jonathan Majors, man, what an actor. Holy crap. Holy crap, what an actor.
And we should say, too, that this is one thing critics do agree on, is that he was awesome. he was the
him and Michelle
force
Pfeiffer
in the movie. Yeah.
He and Michelle Pfeiffer carried the movie.
Yeah.
They carried the movie 100%.
Quite an actress, you know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But the fact is, the writing of the way they set this up, I never felt like Kang was really that much of a threat. I mean, yeah, he was threatening, but he was not like, holy moly, we need to get the Avengers in on this, because otherwise it's going to be, I don't know. For me, they're a victim of their success. They become too formulaic. They don't allow their directors to do anything interesting, and we don't ever feel like our heroes are ever at risk. I mean, what do you think?
That's a great point. Yeah, you know, I think that whenever we were introduced to Thanos, remember the end credit scene where we were introduced to Thanos? I remember the theater just going wild. I mean, people said, "Oh my gosh!" Yeah, and you're right. With Kang, he was introduced in a much more subtle way, and even though he was introduced in Loki in the last episode of the first season of Loki, and then here, you know, he's introduced. But in fact, I had people who were sitting in the theater with me. I went to watch this in the theater, and there's a guy who was freaking out that Kang had died so easily. And before we got,
I think that's fair.
Scenes. Yeah, he was, and so this was interesting because also a black guy who is watching Kang and wants Kang to succeed, and so whenever the ants are coming, he's like, he got taken out by a bunch of ants. What the hell? You know, what's going on with that? And so whenever the end credit scene comes, he literally jumped up and started shouting. I mean, so I think you're right that it doesn't feel like Kang was introduced in a way that made him really a threat, and they defeat them pretty easily. I mean, I get that.
I think that's probably my big problem. I mean, I've actually seen a few reviews that celebrated the writing. I think the writing was absolutely not good on this at all. I mean, agree. You got Kang, who is Kang the Conqueror. Like, that's the Kang character that we have. It's Kang the Conqueror. He is so bad. He is so threatening that the other Kangs are like, we have to get rid of him. We're not going to kill him, because when we kill him, he may come back in another way and be just as threatening or whatever. So we're just going to put him where he can't do anything. And then you've got this guy who has killed the Avengers so many times that he literally says, it's all sort of a blur to me. It's all become a blur to me. That dude gets taken down by Ant-Man, the guy who can get bigger and smaller, and not even by
Ant-Man, by ants.
It's both. It's a combination, right? And it's kind of like, I don't know how that, and he's dead. Like, there is this whole thing of maybe he's not really dead. And he's gonna no. The other Kangs in one of the trailer that we get at the end of the trailer add-ons talk about that he's gone. The director has said no. He's literally it's it. That's all you're going to see of Kang the Conqueror. It's over with.
Yeah.
For me, that was just listen. We could go.
We could, and you know, and I'm interested to talk more about the racial issues in this whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, and also in how Kang plays into all that. But you're right. You know what? We gotta move on. We gotta talk about theology and politics. So why don't we take a quick break and let's come back and dive into it.
back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're here for our Theo Politico segment. So, Caleb, you know me. I like to throw curveballs. I like to not ask questions that I think you might be expecting. You started off the last segment with one of your favorite quotes. I'm going to start off with my absolute favorite quote. It almost hit me across the head like a 2x4. Scott's daughter, Scott being Ant-Man, his daughter Cassie says to him, "Just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening."
Mm-hmm.
And it was great for the movie. It's one of the best lines in the movie. Matter of fact, I wish that they would have done a lot more developing of that, even though it does mean what I hinted at our last segment, that they kind of strip away some of Scott. All of a sudden, Scott has become this guy that's much more interested in protecting his family and not worrying about the world. Whereas one of the most adoring characteristics of him in the first two movies was that even though he was a criminal, so to speak, he really did care about other people. And all of a sudden they take that away from him. And she's like, just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. I'm wondering, is there something there? I think part of the reason it resonated with me is it reminds me so much of parts of the Christian church. Am I reading too much in, or do you see that happening? Are there not two, like the difference between just because it's not happening to you? I mean, what were your thoughts when that line was said, and how do you relate it to where we are in terms of the church?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great line, and it's one of those that you have to stop and think. It's great writing, makes you stop and think outside.
Absolutely.
It takes you it hits you in a way that brings you a little bit outside the movie where you can think, oh, crap, how am I doing this too? In what ways am I letting, my perception of the world be defined by my own?
I think I missed probably a few minutes of the movie just because that was such a solid line in my head.
You went on your own mental
right.
journey there.
I had to pull myself back, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's what happens in good sermons too, right, Mark? People go off on their own little journey.
I wouldn't know. I don't claim to write good sermons.
That's because you're giving the sermons. You're concentrating on giving the sermons. On giving the fantastic sermons that take people. So the way it relates to, I've heard you. You're great. So the way it relates to the Christian faith, I think that's very astute, Mark, right? Because so much of Christianity has made the entire focus of the religion about our own personal salvation, our own personal relationship with God. It's very individualistic. And so this has been...
Even our language, the body of Christ broken for you. Not for us, not for the world, for you. I mean, the dogma of the church pushes us towards this, right?
Yeah, you're right, 100%. And I mean, and this is especially true, I think, in Western cultures. I think it's less true in other manifestations of Christianity. But especially in the United States, American Christianity is so individualistic that it's almost like we've forgotten that it's supposed to be a communal religion where we're caring about each other. And I think that focus on individuality actually it takes away from Jesus's core message to the point where, a lot of Christians, I think, are in a whole different religion from the one that Jesus talked about.
I think.
What do you go ahead? Is that fair, Mark?
I think that's very fair. But I also think, I'm gonna. This probably might come off as condescending. I don't know what it's going to come off as. Actually, I do feel like the folks who, the way that they follow Christianity becomes very individualistic and very self-focused and loses sight of the fact that just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. I think they get to it in a lot of ways, honestly. And I'm going to blame the hierarchy of the church, the masculine white privilege hierarchy of the church, for creating dogma that makes people feel like doing that is actually a sort of positive thing, that it puts you in a better place for going to heaven, like that you are doing the right thing. So I have some sympathy for arriving at that point. But I think that we have work that we have to do in terms of helping people break out of that, because the church also ultimately teaches follow that dogma and don't question it. Because if you question it, like what is it? What the it's that meme that goes around of the church sign that says an open mind is the devil's playground. Um,
Don't think for yourself. Thinking for yourself so dangerous.
like welcome to church. Check your brain at the door. Like
Yeah.
it feels like that
Is that problematic?
a little problematic. And so my question to follow up is,
Yeah.
what should the folks who at some point managed to break out of that cycle? I definitely was in that cycle. I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church all the way through high school. I was in the Southern Baptist Church, and at some point I had to break out of that cycle. But I chose to remain in the church. What do those of us who are in the church who recognize that it's unhealthy and maybe are sympathetic about folks who have been taught to do it this way, what do we need to be doing to help folks break out of it, to feel safe and not feel like they're risking their eternity by questioning these kinds of things, so that they could possibly recognize it's bigger than just me?
Yeah, so I think especially those of us who are in church leadership need to create a space that feels like it's safe to ask questions, and I think we can model that.
How do we do that? But besides just modeling it,
yeah. So, well, I think we start by modeling it by asking questions that people would be afraid to ask, like in public, like in sermons, and then giving. And then helping people think through answers that are different than the answers that they would have been expected to come to in a different place. So you model it from leadership, right? To say, hey, you know what? Actually, I don't believe in hell. Actually, you know what? I don't believe in individual salvation. Actually, I don't believe. And so whenever you say something like that, people are like, whoa, you have to. Or I thought you had to.
So,
or what's going on?
I agree with you. How do you, and this is, I think, a very important question, particularly for ministers in particular, but also just leaders in the church. How do you do exactly what you said? Because I'm with you, man. I'm on board. I'm on that ship with you. How do you do it in a way that invites a person who that might scare to stay on ship, to not jump overboard? How do you do that in a way that feels safe?
Right. So I think you scare them. First of all, you say you do it because I think most of the time people are already silently asking those questions, and so by articulating them, you're giving people permission. And I've not found a lot of people just say, you know what, that's too much, I'm out of here. A lot of people come and say, hey, I didn't know I could ask that question, or hey, I don't agree with you about that. And I've said things, and I've had people come to the door after the service and say, I don't agree with you. And I said, oh, that's fine. I don't care. And I've had people more shocked by the fact that I said that than whatever it was that I said that they didn't agree with. Right? It's like, wait,
fair enough. Yeah.
I thought that like church leaders, like pastors, ministers, I thought like they were the end all be all. So I think you model it, but then you also invite them into conversation. You have personal one-on-one conversations where you help people deconstruct those kinds of things. And I think that if you set a culture for that and people realize that that's okay, then they invest in fully, man, as they kind of reconstruct it all themselves, with God, or at least that's been my experience.
I completely agree. I completely agree with you. That's been my experience as well. If you if you model making the questions, if you model being open to all kinds of answers, and that you don't expect anyone to follow in lockstep with what you think, it invites the questioning, it invites the exploration, it invites folks to figure out what is healthy for them in terms of spirituality, and finding safe spaces to question the dogma that they have been served for so long. And I know that you've experienced this as well as I have. When they get to that point, you get to see them open up. You get to see them, their life broaden. You get to see them really reinvesting in spirituality in a way they haven't been able to before, because now their ability to think it through and to understand what is real and what makes a real difference, and not have to just be regurgitating what they've been told is very freeing. Very free. All right, we're closing into the end of this segment, but I have one thing that I do want to get your response to. So, Hope, the wasp, we are told at the beginning of the movie that she is now running her dad's company, but she sort of re-envisioned her dad's company, right? It's almost not even a technological kind of company that's advancing technology and what can we do. She has actually turned it into a company that's using technology to improve humanity. A company that's sort of a good in the world powerhouse type of company. But she's also the wasp. Which one of those two does more good for the world? Her as a hero, or her as a CEO of a company that's working diligently to improve the world in environment, economics, hunger, those kind of spaces. It's easy to get caught up in the whole superhero stuff, but I thought there was a missed opportunity here. Once again, going back to the writing, I felt like set a lot of great things up and then never teed off on them. This feels like a storyline that was dropped that could have done a lot. What are your thoughts on the disparity between those two parts of who she is in this movie?
That's a great point, Mark. Yeah, I think I think the best superhero comics, whenever they are, whenever the writing is at the best, whenever they're delving into the characters the best, that this is something that's always a tension point. Like, are they going to be more good as a superhero or as their alter ego? And what ways are they balancing them out? And I think where a lot of the comics end up landing is it's a both and instead of an either or, that they can do both. However, I think that there's something to be said about embracing kind of the humanity aspect and leadership that we can all be taking. I think ethical organizations that are doing good in the world are probably a much greater power than superheroes. Where did you land on it?
No, I'm completely with you. I really think the idea of a superhero is fantastic, but it's also not realistic. One person forcing their will on the world, actually in the big picture, is not good. I don't want to have someone that's so powerful that they can force their own will on the world. But a person who is working to organize, to bring people together, to figure out how can we collectively make the world a better place, I think that has a much more likely possibility of improving our world and setting up a model that other people can follow. Very few of us are going to be able to become ant size, become monster size, and to destroy.
Wait, you can't do that?
Well, I can't do that. I can, but you're not supposed to talk about that. You knew that.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Oh, I forgot.
but yeah, I mean, individually, we're not likely on our own to make such a giant difference that we can change the world. But if we work to bring people together, to structure things in a way that improve the lives of those who are being marginalized and hurt and who are struggling, that's the things that will really change the world. And there was such an opportunity in this movie to do some kind of recall, to come back and show her, after all the crap that happened, to show her sitting back at her desk and actually making a difference and seeing how it's changing lives. There was such an opportunity there that was missed. I wish they would have gone there. But sadly, they didn't. But this probably wouldn't have been as commercially successful because it blew the box office away this weekend. So it might be a good thing that you and I aren't writing for them, because I know that's what the two of us would have decided should have happened in the movie. And I think people would have been, oh, okay, that's fine, whatever. But it's real. It's very real, and it could have made a pretty significant. Okay, We've gone on and on, sir. I've enjoyed the conversation. I think we could do an entire second show on this, but we're not going to be able to. So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back to a segment where we get to have a lot of fun trying to make each other look stupid.
Hello, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're in our final segment, the segment where we try to make each other look stupid. A fun segment. Thanks for hanging in till this very end segment. We're grateful that you're here. Okay, Mark. So
yes.
There are a lot of great lines in this movie, as we've talked about.
Indeed.
One of the other ones that I enjoyed is as the ants are coming in to take out Kang, which we have already revealed they are successful in doing, for better or for worse.
Hooray for the ants.
Go ants.
Here's my sucker with the ants. I'm going to enjoy a little bit of it just to celebrate the ants.
Okay, you should. I hope they don't get you like they got Kang, Mark.
I hope not to. We'll see.
Okay, but who knows? I mean, okay, so Michael Douglas's character says as the ants are coming in, I know socialism is a charged word, but we've got a lot we can learn from the ants. Mark, okay, so do we have something to learn from the ants about socialism, and how does that relate to Christianity? Because if we were going to talk about socialism and Christianity in a lot of Christian circles, we'd get ourselves in trouble. But I'm curious to know what you think about that, Mark.
Well, no, I absolutely. Anyone who doesn't think Christianity is about socialism hasn't read the book of Acts. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's not a very complicated thing. I mean, you can extrapolate it from the teachings of Jesus pretty easily, that we all need to be caring for each other, supporting each other, and trying to raise each other up and make us equal and loving everyone equally, even our enemies. But I mean, it makes it so clear in the book of Acts that the ideal scenario for a Christian community is that we all love and support each other. I mean, I think this is yet another example of the poor right. God, I feel so bad because these guys and ladies are making crazy money compared to anything that I am possible. And I could not write a screenplay. I know I couldn't. I would like to try, but I have no doubt that I couldn't. But there is this beautiful setup here of the ants and the socialism of the ants, and Kang with his dictatorship fascism that he's trying to install, and how the socialism wins out because of the failings of the self-centeredness of because listen, Kang ultimately, his downfall is his self-centeredness, is his desire to win, and which is a great line where Scott tells to him, I don't have to win, we just both have to lose. Kang needs to win, and he actually destroys himself because of his own greed, because he could have easily used his time machine chair and gotten out of there, but he wanted to win. So he hung out long enough to bring in a much larger group, which ultimately destroyed him. And for me, that kind of comes back to what your question is like, when we raise each other up, when we are all in it together, it's much better. We all survive. Kang's dictatorship was all about himself, and he destroyed himself because of it. He ultimately isn't around anymore. We're not going to see Kang the Conqueror. Christianity, are you kidding me? Is it about socialism? Yeah, of course it is. That is the core of the message. If you really love everyone, you want them to be as equally successful as you are. That's socialism.
I'm quoting you on that. I like that, Mark. You know, one thing
What's-
that that I was thinking as you're talking about this, there's also, I think, a parallel between Kang and, say, the Roman Empire and the ants,
Great
Ant-Man,
point.
this whole
Yep.
and the early Christian movement. Except that
Mhm.
the opposite happens, right? Because
Right.
in real life, the Romans squash the early Christians. And I mean,
Unfortunately, yep.
yeah, Christianity came on and reinterpreted those events. But the Roman Empire went on strong and
Yeah,
almost
absolutely.
unnoticing the early Christian
Absolutely.
movement. And so
Mhm.
so in real life, it's the powers that have gone on. And so I think we can read kind of a message of hope, of kind of uh, of, a socialist vision, or a vision of being together. And yeah, I agree with you, Mark. I think that this is ultimately what Christianity is about. And I had a
Of course.
mentor in seminary who said, you can't come out of seminary without being a socialist, or you haven't read the gospel. You haven't really even
Perfect. Love
read
it.
it. I
Yeah,
think that's
love
right.
it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's my question. What's yours, Mark?
All right, here's mine. Mine is not nearly as important to the world as your question really was. My question is this. So I'm going to ask you. I'm asking a lot of you here. Think back to Ant-Man and the Wasp, the movie. Okay.
And then the Wasp, 2018.
Yeah.
Okay.
So near the end of the movie, Scott has to go back to get some quantum energy to help the ghost stabilize herself. And Janet is there with him. Janet, who spent 30 years in the quantum realm. And before he goes back to capture this quantum energy, she does not warn him about Kang.
Yeah.
Why didn't she warn him about Kang? Why would she not say, oh, by the way, I've been trying not to talk about this. Damn, there's this dude that you might run into who could really, excuse my language, fuck your life up. So be careful. Why did that not happen?
They hadn't planned that far ahead in the writing to know who the big bad was going to be after Thanos. That was still before he was gone. So if I'm going to, but I think that's the real reason. If we want to say in the continuity of the series, what happened, then she said that she couldn't talk about it because I think she was ashamed of what she had done, and she felt great shame in unleashing Kang on the various inhabitants of the quantum realm. And so I think she was at a point where she couldn't deal with that. And so I think we all have, or many of us have, experiences like that where there are things that we really need to come to terms with, but aren't open enough with ourselves to actually be able to admit those things to ourselves, or more importantly, to others. So I don't know. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she couldn't say it, but maybe she couldn't come to terms with that for herself, and she wasn't ready to share. But I think ultimately, Mark, they hadn't written it yet. They hadn't decided on Kang, and so so there's no reason warming. What do you think? Where are you?
I think ultimately you're right. They just hadn't written it and they hadn't thought it through. But here is my in-universe answer.
Okay, all right.
I'm gonna play with timeline stuff here.
Okay.
And you know how I geek out about this kind of stuff. So here's my in-universe answer. I think she didn't warn him because at that point she didn't remember Kang. Matter of fact, I think at that point she hadn't experienced Kang. In Loki, we have a scenario where he who remains was trying to create one timeline where all these Kang variants didn't happen. And that was during the 30 years that she was experiencing in the quantum realm. I think that Ant-Man 2 happened during that period. So I don't think she had any recall, not even recall, experience. I don't think her time in the realm at that point included Kang. At the end of Loki, a Loki variant kills Kang, the He Who Remains, which opens up all the variants of Kang. And one of those variants ends up going to the realm. So I think that Loki happens after Ant-Man 2. And that's what opens her up, because all of a sudden there is a variant of Kang that gets exiled and all those memories flood in for her. That's my answer. I'm probably, you know me, I'm stitching shit together.
I love it, Mark. I think they should hire you to write this, because I'm not convinced.
I wish they would, because I need that money.
You want to be part of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise? Because that sounds fantastic. Because I'm not sure they're going to explain it.
A spiritual advisor for this shit? I assume they do.
I think they do. And look,
that's the only way I can make sense of it, right?
I like that. I think that makes it's logical. It makes a lot of sense. And so if not, then you should write a letter complaining to Marvel that you had the perfect solution and that they just passed right by it. Okay. Hey, this has been fun, Mark. And it was fun to get to geek out about a superhero movie, because it's been a while since one has come out. And so I'm glad that we got to do this. I was looking forward to this, and I know you were too. So we don't have a superhero movie next week, but Mark, do you want to tell them what we're going to watch?
Absolutely. So this is a weird time of the year. Everyone's trying not to release anything, because during February in particular, it's hard to release something that gets put up for awards at the end of the year. But there is a recommended show by the New York Times that I think you and I have decided might be interested to do. It's called Vesper. The title character, Christina, is a 13-year-old who's trying to survive in the post-apocalypse. And ironically, Earth ended up being ravaged in this show by the genetically engineered viruses and organisms that have been invented to fight off environmental doom. We've done several episodes where the environmental doom has been important. So I think this could be a pretty interesting show to discuss and figure out where it goes.
I can't imagine why things like viruses and the environment are on people's minds.
Right.
Can't they write about something that's relevant to what we're
Why in the world are
through?
people talking about this? I mean, I don't understand why there's... I think out of our last 4 shows, 3 of them have been about this. I don't understand. Why in the world?
We'll see. So we'll have something to compare Vesper to. I can't wait until next week. Hey, hope you all will join us next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine Jesus, nobody will sky. Moonshine